It's Thursday afternoon. The Bears are about 72 hours away from playing the Lions, something like that. I have no idea. I think it's a 12 p.m. Sunday game, but there's a lot going on. We had Bill Lazor speaking to the media today. Matt Nagy said on Wednesday that because he likes speaking to the media better on Wednesdays, that's just the way it's going to be for the rest of the season, whether the people in the media like myself and Max like it or not. But what's up, guys? Welcome to the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Usayd Kosho and Max Smith here. You can follow us on Twitter at Max Smith ESM and at Usayd Kosho. Follow Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. Max, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Still just trying to comprehend everything that's happened over the past couple of days in the world of the Chicago Bears. There's really nothing coming out, right? We had, like you mentioned, the press conference with Matt Nagy, and then, of course, we heard Bill Lazor talk today. But all we've been hearing is lip service. Geez, as I get attacked here, has been lip service with really no promises on anything. Matt Nagy hasn't officially announced that he's handing over play calling. We really have no idea what's going on in that world. We know that Justin Fields is practiced in full. We know that there's some weird things with his hands, but Matt Nagy said, whoa, hey guys, Justin may not start. We might put Nick Foles in. We don't know what's happening there. So really, there's just a lot of question marks, and there's really no answers. But today we're going to talk about the Lions. We're going to talk about what this game could bring. We're going to talk about how the Bears could win, how the Lions could win. We're going to talk about Bill Lazor if he takes over play calling. What does that bring to the Chicago Bears offense? We're going to talk about if it even matters. Eddie Goldman is finally back practicing in full, which is fantastic. Might see him play against the Lions, which would be huge. However, Khalil Mack did not practice for the second straight day after suffering his foot injury against the Browns that he was able to finish the game with. Might be something serious. But, of course, Justin Fields practiced in full as well. But before we start with everything, let's talk about Matt Nagy. Let's talk about Bill Lazor. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I thought one of the things that was interesting when you look at the Matt Nagy press conference on Wednesday was that Matt never specifically said, hey, I'm going to be handing over the play calling duties to Bill Lazor. Now, you contrast that to last year going into that week 9 or 10 Monday Night Football game against the Minnesota Vikings. Matt had mentioned on Friday, he's like, look, I'm taking over, or I'm relinquishing play calling duties to Bill Lazor. And so ultimately, when you look at this, the fact that nothing's been said, now things could certainly change because Matt Nagy could meet with the media on Friday and say, yeah, the switch is official. It's going to be Bill Lazor. But ultimately, I don't think that who the play caller is does not matter if you can't execute the plays that are called. That's ultimately what this comes down to. I know I tweeted saying that on Monday or Tuesday, I tweeted this. I was just like, look, some people are giving Matt Nagy way too much credit for his ability to quote unquote get rid of play calling and then just be a good head coach. Just because he gives up play calling does not make him automatically a good head coach. Sure, he was the cool kid on the block in 2018 because of 8 straight wins and knocking off teams like the Los Angeles Rams that went to the Super Bowl that year, and because of stuff like Club Dub. And side note, today also is the 3-year anniversary of Mitch Trubisky's 6 touchdown game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I also think that, getting back to what I said, I mean, Bill Lazor calling plays does mean you're going to see more play action. You're going to see guys like David Montgomery get an uptick in production. But ultimately, if the Bears can't execute, it does not really make a difference because you can call plays, you can put your players in positions to succeed. But if those players aren't executing, that's on the players and on coaches.
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say happy International Podcasting Day. This isn't really a podcast, but it's right up there. So happy podcasting day to you. We were just on yesterday, great show. So thanks for having me. Bill Lazor. Bill Lazor said some cool things today. Honestly, he said some things that made me go, that's nice. A little bit refreshing to hear. He basically said, and quote, if I could go back a week, I can't, but if I could, I'd hope that I'd have a different protection plan to move the pocket more, to help on the edges, to use the tight ends more. It's easy to say, let's learn from it and have it not happen again, but changing it is a different thing. That's not a Nagy quote. That's not something that you're going to hear out of the words of a mouth of Matt Nagy ever. So hearing that from Bill Lazor was a little refreshing. He also went on to say, I think you have to assume that teams are looking at it. in regards to how the team or how the offensive line was completely picked apart by the Cleveland Browns defense. So Bill Lazor is aware that now teams in the league, when they're playing the Bears, stuck with the Lions, saw what happened and went, wait a second, we can absolutely tank this team by picking on their offensive linemen. Now, protection schemes are everything, right? And I want to roll this back a bit. This is a bit of a controversial take. I love Justin Fields as much as the next guy, right? But Kurt Warner put out a fantastic YouTube series of episodes breaking down the game that we all unfortunately had to watch. And one of his main criticisms was Justin was holding on to the ball too long. It's true. And I mean, everyone's going to say, well, you are going to hold the ball too long when you have 0.8 seconds to get the ball out of your hands. Yeah, that's not every play. There were plays where Justin legitimately had a pocket and he was on his back foot. He was ready to rip. He just didn't. There was a little bit of hesitancy there. That doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is he's not confident with his wide receivers yet. If you have chemistry with your wide receivers there, you're willing to throw the ball at them when the back of their helmet is facing you, because you know you're in sync like that he's going to break on his route and the ball's going to be right there and you're going to have first down. That's not there yet. So when I see Kurt Warner, when I see these replays, when I watch this film and I go, why isn't he getting rid of the ball? Darnell Mooney's wide open in the middle of the field. Cole Kmet has his man beat. Allen Robinson has his man beat. Why isn't he's ready? He's on a hitch. He's ready to rip. Why isn't he doing it? He's not confident. He doesn't trust his wide receiver yet. His wide receiver doesn't trust him yet. That's clearly an example of what happens when you put your quarterback with the ones in 5 days and say, go out there and play a professional football game. That's exactly what happens. And that, in my opinion, is entirely on Matt Nagy. When you have 180 some odd days to get your first string quarterback, your potential franchise quarterback, to take reps with your starters, and you don't until 5 days before he's supposed to start his first career game, that's a fireable offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because and again, we were on the YouTube channel doing like 2 or 3 shows a week during training camp. And when we were breaking down some of those training camp press conferences, it was almost like it felt like Justin, despite working with the twos, was able to really get up to speed when he was given those limited opportunities working with the ones. And if you guys remember, one of the things I said was, okay, Miami Dolphins are coming to town. It's going to be closed off to the fans. The Dolphins beat is going to have to follow whatever the Bears beat is following in the Bears media policies. And Dolphins people actually tweeted at me on Twitter saying, hey, why don't the Bears allow live tweeting during practices? I have no idea. But the reason I bring it up is because when you had all that going on behind closed doors, there were times where Justin Fields was getting some reps with the ones. And then that led to a ton of misinformation being spread that, oh my God, Justin Fields, he's throwing to Allen Robinson right now, but the second team OL's out there and the second team running backs are out there. The second team tight ends are out there. So right now, Justin Fields getting reps with the ones. And it's like, no bullshit. Okay, there's a roster that's in place. Look at the roster. Look at the jersey numbers. All right, look at who's who. So Justin never really got reps with the ones. And I think when we go back and we look at Matt Nagy's plan, what had happened is that his plan became so Andy Dalton centered that there was almost an aspect of it, you could argue looking back at it now, that was totally forgotten about how to get Justin the physical reps with the ones that he needs. Because the mental reps, Justin, you can throw the all 22 on in front of him and he can tell you, well, I didn't rip the ball here. I didn't let it go because my big thing was that they were in cover 0, they were in cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, and I was afraid that the safety was going to come downhill and make a play that would lead to an incompletion. Justin can tell you that, but for him to get the physical reps and actually learn, I think would have been way more important. And regarding just the Kurt Warner breakdown, I haven't seen it yet, but I can tell you right now, there were instances in this game where Justin legitimately did hold on to the ball too long. And what was one of his red flags coming out of Ohio State? Well, there were primarily 2 red flags. One, does he have it mentally? And number 2, could he play fast enough because he was holding on to the ball too long? Could he process and look at the defense fast enough, both pre and post snap, in order to get the ball out and to make those quick, efficient decisions without thinking? Now, how do you combat that moving forward with the Bears? Well, one of the things that you need to do, and I said this on Tuesday, and I'll say the same thing again, you need to cut the field in half for Justin, and you need to simplify the offense down. If you're going to go five wide, you can go five wide. That's cool. But if you're going to show five wide, then you need to not have Justin go through all five reads. You need to have it be basically like a two or a three read offense is what you really have to do if you're going to do dumb stuff like go five wide sometimes and get your quarterback killed against a strong pass rush. If you're going to go 12 personnel, okay, well, then one of your reads needs to be the tight end, the other read needs to be a wide receiver. All right, only to one side of the field. That's legitimately what you need to do. And then as time goes on, you go ahead and you insert a bit more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, you're in a position where you look up and between week 4 and let's just say weeks 13, 14, 15, between like a 6 to 12 week period, all of a sudden now Justin's going 1, 2, 3 in all his progressions.
Yeah, and progression obviously has to do with time, right? The more time you have in the pocket, the ability to look at your twos and your threes. And the critique from Kurt and the critique that I was like, well, of course, watching the game live, I'm like, oh, this feels a little weird. And then going back and, of course, watching people who know a lot more about football than me, helping me solidify my opinions, is if the first read was open, he took a second. He just took too long of a second. And when he did get the ball out, it was too late. The window was already closed, right? And I think that's a legitimate rookie mistake. Like, I think that's something that guys just learn because the game is so much faster in the NFL than it is in college. You're completely right. And that was one of the issues coming out of college for him was, can he hit those windows on time? His ball is incredibly accurate. He has great arm strength. He's physically ridiculously talented. He has the highest test scores out of any quarterback coming out, or the Wonderlic scores, or whatever they gave him that he was ridiculously high on in the draft and the combine. And can he put it all together? Does he have that knowledge to take from the whiteboard to the field? And, we just have to watch that. And I'm not going to go out and be a Justin Fields hater because I'm not. I think he has the ability to answer all those questions. It's just going to take time. It really is just going to take time. So for the Lions, let's transition into that. Justin Fields start. Looks like he's going to start. This is a good opportunity for him to kind of pick himself up after the last week. I think Sam Mustipher put it perfectly when asked about what happened that week. He said, or what are you learning in the film? He said, it's like going to the dentist office, right? He said, whenever you go to the dentist office, you get honest feedback. You may hate it. You may not like it, but they're giving you the honest feedback that you need to do to improve yourself, right? Like, oh, man, I really ought to floss. Like, dude, I can tell you're not flossing. You should probably start flossing. You're like, well, I hate flossing. Like, I don't care. Just do it. Basically the same scenario with watching that game. Look, guys, you stunk. You stunk bad. I don't care that you don't like that you stunk, but guess what? You did. So you better start doing the things to make sure that you don't stink again, so you don't get your rookie quarterback's head ripped off. Hopefully we see that bounce back against the Lions. From an offensive side of the ball, there's really nothing we can preview because we don't really know. At least for me, like if I do see anything, we're probably gonna see a lot more David Montgomery in this game, regardless of what happens. It's just probably what we're gonna see to give some of the load off Justin, regardless of who's calling. But outside of that, I don't really know what else to talk about on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, I'll say this on the offensive side of the ball. And again, we brought this up in our preview, or I'm sorry, in our review of the Bears Browns game, is that one of the things you need to see is this is getting these tight ends more involved in the offense. Okay. And if you're going to trot Justin Fields out there, then you need to make sure his confidence is keeping his confidence up and at a high level is going to be something that's very critical. And so for Justin, ultimately, what you need to do is shy away from the 11 personnel. It makes absolutely zero sense for you to run at times. Go with the 12 and the 13 personnel. And I'm not just saying that because Jimmy Graham's sitting on this roster making like $8 or $9 million. I'm legitimately saying it because tight ends were traditionally viewed as guys that would be just blockers. And now the more and more that the modern game evolves and becomes more of a pass first league, tight ends are becoming so valuable that it's getting hard to find a good pass rush I'm sorry, a good tight end is what it is. And if you have a good tight end, a guy like a Travis Kelsey or a George Kittle, it's legitimately a rare commodity that would fit into any other offense in the NFL. And so you need to get Cole Kmet more involved. Your play calling can't be predictable. How are you going to get Bill Lazor? If you're the guy calling plays, you need to get Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson going. Robinson and Mooney have the potential to be a top 10 wide receiver duo in the NFL. I'd even argue top 5. But the question is this is, hey, can both of these guys legitimately get going? Because both of them have stumbled out of the gate too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been harping on 12 and 13 all week just because you have so many tight ends, might as well use them. But moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we have some interesting comments from Dan Campbell, the new coach out of Detroit with the Lions. He basically told reporters that he's prepared for Dalton, Foles, and Fields, that he, under his belief, he's certainly going to see Justin Fields, but he thinks that if Dalton's not ready to go, he's preparing the team for Nick Foles to start. That's an interesting comment. Don't know if that's a smokescreen. Don't know if that's just Dan Campbell being crazy Dan Campbell. But that's potentially what we're looking at, is the defense preparing for a Nick Foles start. And under his rationale, the offense that Nick Foles would be running would be basically the same that Justin Fields would be running. RPOs, more empty set gun formation, spread offense, the stuff that we just saw that didn't work against the Browns. But that's what Dan Campbell thinks is going to happen. That's for the Lions defense. Let's talk about Chicago's defense, shall we? A little flip flop there. Defense. What are we looking at? This Lions offense obviously has issues across the ball, outside of TJ Hawkinson, outside of DeAndre Swift, outside of Jared Goff. Their offensive line isn't great. Play calling isn't really all that inspirational. I'm like certainly not that scared of this offense. Jared Goff is an interesting addition to the NFC North, but he's probably down there, lower tier quarterbacks. He obviously wasn't the answer for Sean McVay, so I don't know why he's supposed to be the answer for the Lions. He's probably nothing more than a holdover. But this team was competitive against some pretty solid opponents. So do they have an opportunity to win here?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. And I'll tell you guys why Jared Goff was currently is the quarterback of the Lions. Was he the answer in Los Angeles? I think at one point you could have argued yes, because of that Super Bowl run that they had, which I know was also on the heels of Todd Gurley. But hey, Jared Goff and guys like Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, let's not act like that passing game wasn't bad either. It was a really good passing game. And so the reason that Jared Goff ended up in Detroit this offseason is because the Lions went and their they hired someone from the Rams front office, Brad Holmes, to be the general manager. And Brad Holmes was actually in the war room the night that the Rams drafted Jared Goff. And so it just ultimately made perfect sense for both sides. Matt Stafford wanted out. Jared Goff wasn't the answer. All of a sudden, you had a general manager in Detroit that was familiar with Jared Goff. And then Sean McVay wanted Matt Stafford because the two met up in Cabo for a vacation that turned into a workcation. And so all of a sudden, it's just like, boom, that trade was made. Now, regarding the Lions offensive line, I'm going to say this. Okay, they have Frank Ragnow as well as Penei Sewell, 2 first-round picks. Let's just be honest. You guys want the cold, hard truth on the numbers? The highest that Ryan Pace has drafted in offensive tackle has been round 2, which was Tevin Jenkins. Prior to that, the highest he drafted in offensive tackle is not Larry Borum. It was the Jordan Morgan from like Cootstown back in 2017, which was the 5th round. Yeah, Ryan Pace's lack of investment at the tackle position has showed up. The Lions are better at investing in the tackle position than you could argue Ryan Pace is. And by the way, the Detroit offensive line you're going to see, it's a makeshift offensive line outside of Ragnow and Sewell. The other guys are completely injured right now. I don't know when they're going to return. And then you go to the skill position players. Look, they have 2 really good running backs in DeAndre Swift as well as Jamal Williams. I think DeAndre Swift's a really hard runner, but him and Jamal Williams, they can both impact the game as receivers as well. That's a really underrated aspect of their offense because I watched a lot of Lions football the first 2 weeks. And then you look at that tight end room. We know what TJ Hawkinson is. He's probably Jared Goff's best friend, but focus your attention on the wide receiver. Is there a wide receiver on the Lions that is a true number one wide receiver? Absolutely not. They lost Kenny Golladay to the New York Giants this offseason. Which side note, complete side note, shout out to our buddies Anthony and Alex, who basically spent the last year convincing themselves Joe Judge was the answer, and now they've totally turned against Joe Judge. I hate to be this guy, Anthony, but I did technically say I told you so, because no person who seriously knows and understands football was going to take a guy seriously, a head coach seriously, that was making his damn players run laps for making mistakes. This is not a high school program. This is a professional football league, okay, that we're talking here. But getting back to it, the Lions wide receivers, there's not a true number one guy there. They have some nice pieces, though. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a really underrated slot receiver that's a rookie from USC. He was one of my prime targets, actually. Had him labeled as a third-round guy in the 2021 NFL draft. But focus your attention on Quintez Cephas. With Tyrell Williams still being on injured reserve, I think Quintez Cephas has emerged as a really nice option for this offense. Looking at Quintez Cephas, he's the type of player that's underrated, but could go off at any time, and is going to continue to develop a relationship with Jared Goff that by the season's end, I think a lot more people are going to be talking about.
Jared Goff liked his tight ends in LA, but he definitely had a more talented wide receiver core with Robert Wood and Cooper Kupp than he does what he's dealing with right now in Detroit. You're completely right. But the interesting 1-2 punch in Detroit is Jamal Williams with DeAndre Swift. They have an interesting backfield to allow Jared Goff that opens up his play action game, which he excels at. He excelled at it in LA. His issue has always been making just bad decisions, and that maybe really hasn't changed much. So far this year, however, Jared hasn't made too many mistakes here. He's thrown 2 interceptions, but he's also thrown 5 touchdowns, currently sitting at 801 yards going into week 4. So very, very big armed offense. They like the passing game, but they also do have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, who both have over 100 yards rushing so far. So they get a fair share of the loads. They're about the same for running attacks. So the defense, Sean Desai is really going to have to look at the 1-2 punch that it looked like we weren't too good at against the Browns with Nick Chubb versus Kareem Hunt. We obviously had Chubb locked down, but it looked like we really weren't ready for them to pull out Hunt that much. That's the benefits of having the 1-2 punch kind of running back system. The Lions have that ability with DeAndre Swift versus Jamal Williams 100%. So Bears just have to make sure that they're schemed for that. Jared Goff could really kind of take advantage of our weak secondary, but we can also take advantage of the fact that they don't have a super strong wide receiver core. So I really don't think this is going to be a shootout by any means. I think it's probably going to be a pretty low-scoring game.
Yeah. For this game, looking at the defensive side of the ball for the Bears, I am going to say this is that a lot of first things first, let me get this side of the way. A lot of the turnover that happened on the Lions roster this past offseason was on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at it, some of the pieces on defense right now are still here from the Matt Patricia days, which Matt Patricia was with the Lions for about 3 to 4 seasons. So ultimately, looking at this whole thing, I am going to say that the Bears do once again have the upper hand on defense. That means another great opportunity for Sean Desai to utilize the great 1-2 punch of Robert Quinn as well as Khalil Mack. Eddie Goldman actually practiced in full today, which is really good news. Justin Fields practiced in full today, which is good news too. Andy Dalton did not practice at all. Khalil Mack did not practice, but if I know one thing about Khalil Mack, I'm going to tell you guys this right now. There's probably a really good chance he suits up on Sunday, but even if he's not there, the Bears are going to go ahead and play without Khalil Mack, and there's still a really decent defense without Khalil Mack, and that's because Sean Desai is going to put these players in a position to succeed. Looking at the secondary here, for Chicago, this is your opportunity with Jalen Johnson and Kendall Vilder looking pretty good so far. Johnson's a rising superstar. Vilder had his up and down moments against the Browns. He was beat a couple times in coverage, but nonetheless, it was still a solid performance. This is, I think, the Kendall Vilder breakout game. This is the game where Kendall Vilder solidifies himself as a legitimate cornerback too against a weaker wide receiver core. All right, Eddie Jackson to Sean Gibson. You guys need to go ahead and bounce back. Deion Bush, DeAndre Houston, Carson, the safeties. You guys got to show up. Same thing with nickel cornerback Duke Shelley. So this is really the game before a critical stretch begins where the Bears are traveling to Vegas to play the Raiders, coming back home to play the Packers, and then on the road again in week 7 to play Tampa Bay before the Steelers and Ravens on Sunday and then Monday night. This is the game where you solidify and cement your status as a 2-2 team that's going to come in and just battle hard against the rest of these teams. So this is the game where the Bears, the entire team, gets its legs underneath itself.
Yeah, ideally, that's definitely what we'd like to see. And with Eddie Goldman back, that definitely helps defend against the rushing attack that the Lions can put on the field. And again, like I've said this all week, and I really don't think the Lions deserve to be an 0-3 team. I think they're cursed by their ownership, something we may know too well. But the Lions, of course, have had just a considerably worse time. So I do feel bad for Lions fans. But things are on the up and up. This is a competitive team that they put together for the first time in a long time. So shout out to Dan Campbell for really putting in the work, and they actually have some talent. They did just lose Jamie Collins, who's one of their leading tacklers on their team right now, but they still do have Romeo Okwara, who's a great linebacker, who's just on a really bad team. So even on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions, they still have some studs, but they're primarily duds. But I somewhat agree. I don't completely agree. I somewhat agree with you. That this could be a game for the Bears to get the legs under them. But I also think that this is most likely going to be a loss for our team. I just think the Lions are too hungry for a win, and I think that the Bears are still looking for an identity here.
Yeah, I think you've got two really hungry teams. I'm gonna say home field advantage does give the Bears the upper hand here. I also do think it is gonna be a relatively low scoring game, so I'm gonna go with Bears 17, Lions 13. I think that the Cairo Santos field goal is going to make all the difference. You're going to see a David Montgomery rushing touchdown, and then you're going to see Justin Fields get his first career passing touchdown on what is going to be a deep post to Darnell Mooney from the slot.
It's really detailed. It's like kind of suspiciously detailed. I'm going to go with Bears 7, Lions 16. I think we're just offense is going to stud, but it's just going to spud out. It's going to be absolute lemon like usual. And now my player to watch this game is Ayla Mcneal. He's a big-bodied nose tackle out of NC State, ridiculously athletic guy. He actually was interviewed by our friends at Fireside Giants. He's a friend of the pod over there, as they viewed him as a very attractive draft profile. For the Giants, ultimately passed on him, but our friends over in Detroit took him in, gave him a home. So as a brief relation to the pod, again, the other team player to watch, definitely one to look at in this game. And he's pretty much up there in leading tackles as well. So he might be a stuffer for Sam Mustipher this week.
Yep. So McNeil's going to be a nice guy to watch. And when Dan Campbell was talking about building or breaking people's kneecaps, he pretty much was saying building in the trenches, which, by the way, is another thing that Ryan Pace has failed to consistently do, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense has been good, though, defensive line. But offensive line, yeah, you could probably give the upper hand to Dan Campbell for emphasizing building in the trenches from the get-go, unlike Ryan Pace. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it from us. Make sure you're following myself and Max on Twitter at Usayd Kolshan, at Max Smith ESM. Follow Fireside Bears on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. Bear down, stay safe. Hopefully, Bill Lazor's calling plays. Stay safe if you're going to go to the game on Sunday. Soon we'll be saying you're going to Arlington Heights, but that's going to do it from us, guys. So peace out and bear down. We'll see you guys on Monday night with a Bears Lions recap and reaction video, but peace out.